The red warning lights flashed across the control room on Kepler Station. Admiral Zixithera pressed her six-fingered hand against her blue forehead and let out a deep sigh. Another human incident report had just landed on her desk, and the automated threat system was going crazy again. "Computer, display the latest Earth classification," she said in her translator device. The holographic screen lit up in front of her. The words made her stomach drop. Galactic threat level, maximum. Just yesterday, Earth had been rated as moderate risk, the same level as planets with occasional volcanic activity or minor civil wars. Now it was ranked alongside black holes and rogue AI networks, all because of three simple words that humans kept saying. Captain Lisa Wong walked into the control room, her human diplomatic uniform neat and pressed. She looked tired. Being the only human representative in this sector meant she spent most of her time explaining why her species kept breaking things that should not be breakable. "Let me guess," Lisa said. "Another hold my beer incident?" Admiral Zixithera nodded. Her species had evolved from creatures similar to Earth dolphins but with arms and legs. They were logical, careful, and planned everything at least 50 times before acting. Humans, she had learned, were the complete opposite. "Mars Colony 7, the Admiral said. "Your species member Jake Murphy, construction worker, age 32, from a place called Texas." Lisa sat down in the chair across from the Admiral's desk. "What did he do this time?" The Admiral touched her control panel, and a video began playing on the wall screen. It showed a large room filled with humming machines and blinking lights. This was the main power station for Mars Colony 7, home to over 2 million beings, from 12 different species. In the video, a tall human man with brown hair and dirty work clothes stood in front of a massive fusion reactor. Warning lights flashed red all around him. Other workers, both human and alien, stood far back from the dangerous machine. The fusion reactor had stopped working, Admiral Zixithera explained. "Standard protocol requires evacuation of the entire colony. Emergency repair teams need 48 hours minimum to fix such problems." The reactor core temperature was rising toward critical levels. On screen, Jake Murphy was talking to his supervisor, a worried-looking alien with 4 arms. The alien was waving all 4 hands in what clearly meant no, absolutely not. "Here comes the phrase," the Admiral said. Jake Murphy grinned at his supervisor and said the words that had triggered alerts across 17 star systems. "Hold my beer." He handed his drink to the nearest person and walked toward the reactor. What happened next made every alien engineer who watched the video question everything they knew about physics. Jake had climbed into the reactor housing with nothing but a toolbox and what he called elbow grease. For the next 6 hours, he had torn apart systems that took teams of specialists months to understand. He removed panels, rewired connections, and installed parts that should not work together. The most disturbing part was that Jake was humming while he worked. He seemed to be enjoying himself. "Our best engineers studied the video frame by frame," Admiral Zixithera continued. "Jake Murphy used 47 different violations of standard safety protocols. He connected power systems in ways that should have killed him instantly. He bypassed 17 critical safety systems. He used duct tape." Lisa winced. Duct tape was becoming a diplomatic issue across the galaxy. "But the reactor works," Lisa said. "It more than works," the Admiral replied. "Mars Colony 7 now produces 3 times more power than it was designed to make. The reactor runs cleaner than any fusion system we have ever seen. Jake Murphy somehow created improvements that our best scientists say are impossible." The video continued showing Jake climbing out of the reactor, covered in grease and smiling. He walked back to his supervisor, took his beer back, and said, "Should be good now. Might run a little better than before." The reactor had hummed to life with a sound so smooth that several alien engineers had started crying. It was the most beautiful fusion reaction any of them had ever heard. 3 of our top engineering schools have requested to study the Murphy modifications," Admiral Zixithera said. "The Centauri Technical Institute wants to make Jake Murphy an honorary professor. The problem is that when we asked him to explain what he did, he just said it seemed like common sense." Lisa rubbed her temples. This was not the first time she had heard this story. Humans had a talent for fixing things in ways that made alien Scientists question their entire education. So the computer upgraded our threat level because Jake fixed a reactor? Lisa asked. The computer upgraded your threat level because this is the 47th time this month that a human has said, "Hold my beer," and then changed reality. Admiral Zixthera replied. Our predictive algorithms show a 97% correlation between that phrase and subsequent impossible events. The Admiral pulled up more files on her screen. Lisa could see dozens of incident reports, all flagged with the same warning. Human improvisation event. Probability cascade detected. We have a problem, Captain Wong, the Admiral said. Your species is breaking the universe and you are doing it with beer and hand tools. The Galactic Council wants answers. Lisa looked at the screen showing Jake Murphy walking away from his impossible repair job. He looked so normal, so everyday human. Just a guy who saw a problem and decided to fix it. He had no idea that his simple action had triggered emergency protocols across half the galaxy. When do I meet with the Council? Lisa asked. Tomorrow, Admiral Zixthera replied. And Captain Wong? You might want to prepare an explanation for why humans keep making our computers have nervous breakdowns. Outside the window of Kepler Station, stars twinkled peacefully in the darkness of space. Somewhere among those stars, other humans were probably looking at broken things and getting that same look in their eyes that Jake Murphy had. The look that meant they were about to hand someone their drink and prove the impossible was just another word for challenge accepted. Admiral Zixthera looked at her threat level display and wondered if the computer was actually showing the right warning. Maybe maximum was not high enough. Captain Lisa Wong stepped into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council on Kepler Station. The room was enormous, with curved walls that reached up to a domed ceiling covered in stars. 12 different alien species sat in a circle, each at their own specially designed desk. At the center of the room stood a single chair meant for her. Lisa had attended diplomatic meetings before, but never one where she was the only person being questioned. The aliens looked serious, worried, and some even looked scared. She could not understand why fixing a power reactor would make anyone afraid. The Supreme Chancellor, a tall being with purple skin and 3 eyes, stood up. His translator device made his voice sound calm, but Lisa could see tension in his movements. Captain Wong, he said, thank you for coming. We have called this emergency session to discuss a growing problem. Your species appears to be destabilizing reality on a regular basis. Lisa sat down in the center chair. I am not sure I understand, Chancellor. Humans are just trying to help fix things when they break. A council member who looked like a giant butterfly with crystal wings fluttered forward. Captain, we have been tracking human activities across the galaxy. Every time one of your people says the phrase "hold my beer," something impossible happens. We have created a database. The room darkened, and a holographic display appeared above Lisa's head. She looked up to see a list of incidents, each marked with dates, locations, and threat levels. There were dozens of entries, and new ones kept appearing as she watched. Let us start with incident number 1, said the Chancellor. Danny Rivera, mechanic, asteroid mining station Gamma 7, 3 months ago. The hologram showed a video of a smiling man in coverall standing next to a broken spaceship engine. The hyperdrive unit was smoking, and sparks flew from several torn cables. Other workers stood around looking hopeless. The hyperdrive was completely destroyed, explained the butterfly-like council member. Replacement parts would take 6 months to arrive. The mining crew was trapped. In the video, Danny Rivera scratched his head and looked at the broken engine. Someone off camera asked if anything could be done. Danny grinned and said, Hold my beer, I got an idea. What happened next made Lisa's eyes widen. Danny had grabbed a wrench and started hitting the hyperdrive in specific places. With each hit, the engine seemed to respond. After 20 minutes of what looked like random banging, Danny connected 2 wires that should never touch each other. The engine did not explode. Instead, it opened a hole in space that glowed with soft blue light. Danny Rivera accidentally created the first stable artificial wormhole, the Chancellor said. His repair did not fix the hyperdrive. It created something entirely new, something that should be impossible. Lisa watched as the video showed Danny sticking his head through the glowing hole and waving at the camera from the other side. He was now simultaneously in two different places in the galaxy. "We have scientists who have spent their entire lives studying wormhole theory," said a council member who looked like a walking tree. Danny Rivera built one with a wrench and determination. The holographic display changed to show another incident. This time it was a woman in military uniform standing on an asteroid. Warning lights flashed around her as a massive space rock tumbled toward a civilian space station. "Sergeant Amy Foster," the Chancellor continued. "Last month, Proxima Station." In the video, Amy Foster looked at the approaching asteroid, then at the small amount of explosives her team had brought. The math was simple. Not enough bombs to stop something that big. "Hold my beer," Amy said to her lieutenant. "Time to get creative." Amy had taken apart the explosives and mixed them with asteroid mining equipment, emergency rations, and what appeared to be coffee. The mixture should have been useless. Instead, when she threw it at the asteroid, the explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. "Sergeant Foster did not just destroy the asteroid," explained the Butterfly Council member. "She accidentally created a new form of controlled antimatter. The explosion was so precise that it left behind a perfect sphere of refined metals worth more than most planetary economies." Lisa watched more videos. Pete Johnson, a college student, had tried to fix a broken universal translator by adding extra circuits he found in a video game controller. Instead of fixing the translator, he had created a device that let different species share thoughts directly. True telepathic communication, something that had been theoretical for thousands of years. Then there was Betty Cole, a farmer who had been asked to help with irrigation on a desert planet. The water pumps were broken, and crops were dying. Betty had said, "Hold my beer," and connected the pumps to a weather control system using garden hoses and car parts. She had not just fixed the irrigation. She had accidentally terraformed an entire continent. What had been desert for millions of years was now covered in forests and lakes. 3 different species had applied for colonization permits. "Each incident follows the same pattern," the Chancellor said. "A human encounters a problem. They say, 'Hold my beer.' They attempt a solution that violates multiple laws of physics. The solution works better than anyone thought possible." Lisa looked around the room at the worried faces of the council members. "But these are good things. Jake fixed the reactor. Danny created a new way to travel. Amy saved a space station. These are helpful improvements." "That is exactly the problem," said the tree-like council member. "Your species treats rewriting the laws of physics like changing a light bulb. You do not seem to understand that these things should be impossible." The holographic display showed statistics that made Lisa feel dizzy. In the past 6 months, humans had accidentally revolutionized energy production, space travel, communication technology, and planetary engineering. Each time, the person responsible had acted like it was no big deal. "Our threat assessment computer cannot handle your species," the Chancellor said. "Every time it tries to predict what humans will do next, the calculations break down. You operate outside of logical parameters." A council member who looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. "We have had to create an entirely new category of incident report. We call them Murphy events after your Jake Murphy. They are situations where humans make the impossible happen through sheer refusal to accept limitations." Lisa realized she was looking at the galaxy's growing fear of human unpredictability. These aliens had spent thousands of years building civilizations based on careful planning and scientific understanding. Humans were accidentally proving that the universe was much more flexible than anyone had believed. "What do you want us to do?" Lisa asked. The Chancellor's 3 eyes focused on her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "We want you to stop saying, 'Hold my beer.'" Lisa Wong stared at the Galactic Council in disbelief. The 12 alien species were all looking at her with serious expressions, waiting for her answer. The Supreme Chancellor had just asked humanity to stop saying 3 simple words that had somehow become a threat to galactic stability. "You want us to stop saying, 'Hold my beer'?" Lisa repeated slowly. "That is like asking us to stop breathing. It is not something we plan to do. It just happens." The butterfly-like council member fluttered her crystal wings nervously. Captain Wong, surely your species can control their speech patterns. We are not asking for anything unreasonable. Lisa stood up from her chair and walked to the center of the room. You do not understand. When humans say hold my beer, we are not trying to break physics or create impossible things. We are just seeing a problem and thinking we can fix it better. But that is exactly what makes you dangerous, said the tree-like council member. Your species refuses to accept that some things cannot be improved. You see limitations as suggestions, rather than laws. The Chancellor raised one of his 3 hands. Captain Wong, we have studied human behavior patterns. Every civilization in the galaxy accepts certain boundaries. When our scientists say something is impossible, we find new research directions. When your scientists say something is impossible, they hand someone their beer and prove themselves wrong. Lisa looked around the grand chamber. These aliens had built an amazing galactic civilization based on careful planning and respect for natural laws. They had created incredible technology by working within the rules of physics. The idea that humans kept accidentally breaking those rules scared them. What if we cannot stop? Lisa asked. What if this is just who we are? The floating jellyfish council member pulsed with different colors as it spoke. Then we will have no choice but to quarantine your species. Earth and all human colonies will be isolated until we can find a way to contain your reality-altering effects. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. You want to imprison us because we are good at fixing things? You want to imprison us because we solve problems in ways you cannot understand? She continued. Before anyone could answer, the chamber door opened. A man in an engineering uniform walked in, carrying a toolbox and looking confused. He was about 40 years old, with short gray hair and oil stains on his clothes. Sorry to interrupt, the man said. I am Rick Thompson from Station Maintenance. Someone said the gravity generator in here was acting up again. The Chancellor looked annoyed. Engineer Thompson, we are in the middle of important diplomatic discussions. The gravity system will have to wait. Rick looked around the room and noticed that several council members were floating slightly above their chairs. The jellyfish member was wobbling oddly, and the butterfly-like being was having trouble keeping her wings steady. Actually, that looks pretty serious, Rick said. Gravity fluctuations can be dangerous in a big room like this. Someone could get hurt. Lisa watched Rick set down his toolbox and examine a control panel on the wall. Warning lights were blinking, and she could hear odd humming sounds coming from somewhere below the floor. The whole system is overloaded, Rick muttered to himself. Poor design. Who builds a gravity generator without proper backup systems? The Chancellor's 3 eyes widened in alarm. Engineer Thompson, please do not touch anything. We will call for proper repair specialists. Rick looked at the increasingly worried council members. Some were now floating several inches off their seats. The tree-like being was slowly turning, upside down despite trying to grab onto his desk. This is going to get worse before it gets better, Rick said. Give me about 10 minutes and I can have this running smooth as butter. No, the Chancellor said firmly. We cannot allow any unauthorized modifications to critical station systems. Rick shrugged and started walking toward the door. Your choice. But when that gravity generator fails completely, everyone in this room is going to be stuck to the ceiling until help arrives. Could be hours. As if to prove his point, the humming sound got louder, and several more council members started floating. Higher. The butterfly being was now pressed against the ceiling, fluttering her wings desperately. Lisa saw the look in Rick's eyes. It was the same look Jake Murphy had before he fixed the Mars reactor. The look that said here was a problem that needed solving and rules were just suggestions. You know what? Rick said, turning back to the control panel. Hold my beer. He did not actually have a beer, but he handed his coffee cup to Lisa anyway. The entire council chamber fell silent except for the increasingly urgent sounds of the failing gravity system. Lisa wanted to stop him, but she also wanted to see what would happen. Rick opened his toolbox and pulled out what looked like ordinary hand tools. He removed a panel from the wall and started working. This is madness, whispered the Chancellor. For the next 15 minutes, Rick Thompson did things to the gravity generator that made the alien engineers in the observation booth start taking notes. He bypassed safety systems with paper clips. He used chewing gum to seal connections, He rewired the main control circuits using spare parts that he seemed to pull out of thin air. The most disturbing part was that Rick was whistling while he worked. He seemed completely relaxed, like he was changing the oil in his car, rather than rebuilding a system that kept the entire station from drifting apart. "There we go," Rick said finally, closing the panel. "Should be good as new. Maybe a little better." The gravity in the chamber stabilized instantly. Council members settled gently back into their seats. The humming sound changed to a smooth, almost musical tone that was much more pleasant than before. Rick gathered his tools and took his coffee back from Lisa. "Anything else while I'm here?" The lights have been flickering in Corridor 7. The Chancellor stared at Rick with all three eyes. "What did you do to our gravity generator?" "Fixed it," Rick said simply. "The original design was inefficient. I made some improvements. It should use about half the power now and work more smoothly. You might notice the artificial gravity feels more natural." Lisa realized that Rick had just proven her point in the most dramatic way possible. He had not set out to revolutionize gravity technology. He had just seen a problem and fixed it the way any human would. The fact that his solution was impossible according to alien science was not his fault. "Engineer Thompson," Lisa said, "do you realize what you just did?" Rick looked puzzled. "I fixed a broken gravity generator. Same thing I do every day around here." "Why?" The Supreme Chancellor slumped in his chair. All three of his eyes closed. "We cannot stop them. This is simply how humans think." Lisa smiled at the defeated-looking council. "Now you are starting to understand. We do not try to break your laws of physics. We just refuse to let broken things stay broken." 3 months after the council meeting, the galaxy had changed in ways no one expected. Instead of trying to stop humans from saying, "Hold my beer," the aliens had decided to prepare for what happened next. The Human Improvisation Detection Network was the most advanced monitoring system ever created. It listened to human communications across 17 star systems, watching for dangerous phrases that meant reality was about to get bent out of shape. Admiral Zix sat in the new Emergency Response Center, watching dozens of screens that tracked human activities. Her team included representatives from every major species in the galaxy. They had learned to work together because humans kept creating situations that required immediate attention from everyone. "Alert level orange," announced the computer. "Human subject Carlos Martinez, asteroid mining vessel Deep Digger, Sector 7. Phrase detected, hold my beer." The Admiral pressed the emergency button. Across the galaxy, response teams snapped to attention. Medical ships prepared for casualties. Science vessels moved to safe observation distances. Evacuation ships warmed up their engines just in case. "What is the situation?" Admiral Zixathara asked. The main screen showed a view of space where a massive comet was tumbling toward the trade route between Earth and the Centauri colonies. The comet was the size of a small moon, and it was moving fast enough to destroy any ship that got in its way. Carlos Martinez stood on the bridge of his mining vessel, looking at the approaching disaster. He was a short man with dark hair and the kind of smile that made aliens nervous. His crew included humans and several other species, all of whom were staring at the comet with growing worry. "Standard procedure calls for evacuation of the entire trade route," reported the computer. "Estimated time to clear all traffic, 72 hours. Comet impact with shipping lane, 18 hours. Carlos scratched his chin and looked at the explosives his ship carried for asteroid mining. There was not nearly enough to destroy something that big. A normal person would call for help and hope the evacuation went smoothly. Carlos Martinez was not a normal person. He was human. "Hold my beer," Carlos said to his first officer, a worried-looking alien with blue skin and 4 arms. Every alarm in the emergency response center started ringing at once. The threat level jumped from orange to red to purple. Purple was a new color they had added specifically for human incidents that might accidentally rewrite the laws of physics. Admiral Zixathara watched as Carlos began explaining his plan to his crew. He wanted to use controlled explosions to change the comet's direction. Not destroy it, just push it away from the shipping lanes. "That is actually reasonable," said Dr. Helen Park, the human scientist who worked with the response team. Carlos is not trying to do anything impossible. He just wants to redirect the comet. With mining explosives that are completely inadequate for the job, Admiral Zixthera replied, which means he will have to improvise, which means we should prepare for another miracle. The response teams watched as Carlos and his crew began their work. They attached mining charges to the comet in patterns that looked random but somehow felt purposeful. Carlos connected the explosives with cables and timing devices, whistling as he worked. The explosion patterns make no sense, reported a Centauri engineering expert. He is placing charges in locations that will cancel each other out. The forces should neutralize instead of pushing the comet away. Dr. Helen Park studied Carlos's work through the monitoring system. She had spent months trying to understand why humans kept accidentally breaking physics. Her research had led to a theory that made her colleagues uncomfortable. Carlos is not just placing explosives, she said. He is creating a resonance pattern. Look at the spacing between the charges. Admiral Zixthera looked at the screen showing Carlos's work. The human was not just randomly placing explosives. He was creating a complex mathematical pattern that somehow accounted for the comet's rotation, composition, and gravitational effects from nearby planets. How does he know to do that? The Admiral asked. He does not know, Dr. Helen Park replied. Humans have what I call aggressive optimism. When they encounter a problem, their brains automatically start finding solutions. They do not think about whether something should be possible. They just work until it is possible. Carlos finished placing the last explosive and returned to his ship. His crew looked nervous, but they trusted him. Humans, the response teams had learned, inspired confidence even when they were doing impossible things. Detonation in 10 seconds, Carlos announced over the communication system. The explosion that followed was visible from 12 different star systems. But instead of the chaotic blast everyone expected, the explosives created a perfect spiral of force that wrapped around the comet like invisible hands. The comet did not break apart. It did not speed up or slow down. Instead, it began to glow with a soft golden light as the explosion somehow triggered fusion reactions in its ice and rock core. Impossible, whispered the Centauri engineering expert. The comet's new fusion reactions did not destroy it. They stabilized it. The massive chunk of ice and rock became a small artificial star, burning steadily and peacefully. As the response teams watched in amazement, the comet's gravity began pulling in nearby asteroids and space debris. Within 6 hours, Carlos Martinez had accidentally created a solar system. 3 small planets formed from the collected debris, their orbits naturally stabilizing around the new star. Preliminary scans showed that one planet was already developing an atmosphere. Another showed signs of water formation. Carlos Martinez has created the first successful instant solar system project, Admiral Zixthera announced to the response teams. All ships are ordered to maintain safe distances while we study this new stellar formation. Carlos's voice came over the communication system, sounding pleased with himself. Well, that worked out better than expected. The trade route is clear and we got a bonus solar system out of the deal. Anyone need some new planets? Dr. Helen Park made notes in her research file. Another human had encountered a problem, said, "Hold my beer," and accidentally revolutionized something fundamental about how the universe worked. Carlos had not meant to create a solar system. He had just refused to accept that the comet was too big to move. "Admiral," Dr. Helen Park said, "I think we need to upgrade our threat assessment system again." Admiral Zixthera looked at the beautiful, new solar system that had not existed an hour ago. 3 different species had already submitted colonization requests. The Galactic Council was calling it the greatest terraforming achievement in recorded history. Carlos Martinez was calling it Tuesday. "Computer," Admiral Zixthera said, "create a new threat level above purple. Call it Carlos Orange." The Emergency Response Center settled into routine monitoring mode. Somewhere in the galaxy, another human was probably looking at a broken thing and getting that familiar look in their eyes. The look that meant they were about to hand someone their drink and prove that impossible was just another word for homework. 6 months later, The galaxy had accepted its new reality. The phrase "hold my beer" was now officially classified as a Tier 1 reality alteration event trigger in the Galactic Emergency Protocols. Emergency response teams were permanently stationed near every human colony, not to stop the incidents but to help manage what happened afterward. Captain Lisa Wong walked through the corridors of the newly built Department of Human Affairs on Kepler Station. The department had started with 3 offices and now occupied an entire section of the station. Her official title was Human Liaison Officer, but everyone called her the Chief Beer Holder. The job description was simple: be ready to hold humanity's drink whenever someone got that look in their eyes and started rolling up their sleeves. Captain Wong to emergency response, Lisa spoke into her communication device. We have a code Murphy in Sector 12. Life support failure on Mining Station Alpha. The response was immediate. Roger that, Captain. All teams are moving to safe observation. Distance. Medical ships are standing by. Science vessels are preparing to document whatever happens next. Lisa smiled as she walked toward the shuttle bay. The aliens had learned that when humans said they could fix something, the best strategy was to evacuate the area, record everything, and prepare for the impossible to become routine. Mining Station Alpha was home to 3 million beings from 15 different species. The main life support system had failed during a solar storm, and backup systems were only good for 48 hours. Replacement parts would take a week to arrive, which meant everyone on the station would die unless someone found a solution fast. Someone was Tony Garcia, a maintenance worker from New Mexico who had been fixing broken things since he was old enough to hold a wrench. He stood in the main engineering section, surrounded by alien engineers who looked hopeless and scared. The quantum air recycling system is completely burned out, explained the chief engineer, a tall being with 6 arms and purple fur. Without it, we cannot process carbon dioxide fast enough to keep everyone alive. The backup chemical scrubbers will fail in 2 days. Tony looked at the smoking ruins of the life support system. It was the size of a small building, filled with technology that cost more than most planetary budgets. The quantum field generators that made the system work were fused into useless metal. Well, Tony said, scratching his head, that is definitely broken. The alien engineers nodded sadly. They had spent 18 hours trying to find a solution and failed. The mathematics were clear. Without the quantum recycling system, the station would become uninhabitable in exactly 47 hours and 32 minutes. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Tony asked. The purple-furred engineer stared at him. Tony, the system is completely destroyed. There is nothing left to turn on. Tony walked around the wreckage, poking at burned components and humming to himself. The other engineers watched nervously. They had all heard stories about what happened when humans started examining broken things. You know what? Tony said finally. Hold my beer. He handed his coffee cup to the nearest engineer and opened his toolbox. What came out made the alien observers start taking notes. Duct tape, coffee filters, spare parts from a food processor, and what appeared to be pieces of a children's toy. Tony, the chief engineer said carefully, what are you planning to do? Build a new life support system, Tony replied. How hard can it be? Air goes in, bad stuff comes out, everyone stays alive. For the next 6 hours, Tony Garcia did things that made quantum physicists across the galaxy question their understanding of reality. He connected coffee filters to ventilation systems using duct tape. He wired the food processor parts into the main power grid. He used the children's toy as some kind of control mechanism that somehow regulated quantum field fluctuations. The most disturbing part was not that Tony's improvised system worked. The most disturbing part was that it worked better than the original design. Impossible, whispered the chief engineer as clean air began flowing through the station. Tony stepped back from his creation and wiped his hands on his coveralls. The new life support system hummed quietly, processing air for 3 million beings using spare parts and determination. According to every scientific principle in the galaxy, it should not function at all. There we go, Tony said. Should keep everyone breathing just fine. Might even work better than the old system. Dr. Helen Park arrived on the station 3 hours later with a full research team. She had been studying human improvisation incidents for months, trying to understand how humans kept accidentally revolutionizing galactic technology. "Tony," she said, examining his impossible machine, "do you understand what you have built?" Tony looked at the quietly humming system. "A life support machine? You have created a perpetual motion system that violates 12 laws of thermodynamics," Dr. Park explained. "Your machine produces more energy than it consumes. It should be impossible. But it works," Tony said simply. Dr. Park made notes in her research file. Tony Garcia had just solved the galaxy's energy crisis using coffee filters and duct tape. His machine would keep Mining Station Alpha alive indefinitely without needing fuel, replacement parts, or maintenance. Within a week, Tony received the first Galactic Innovation Award ever given to a human. The ceremony was held on Earth, with representatives from 47 different species attending. Tony wore his best work shirt and seemed confused about why everyone was making such a big deal. "I just fixed a broken air cleaner," he told the crowd. "Same thing I do every day." The Supreme Chancellor presented Tony with a crystal trophy that was worth more than most planets. "Tony Garcia," he announced, "you have given the galaxy the gift of unlimited clean energy and perfect environmental systems. How do you feel?" Tony thought about it for a moment. "Pretty good, I guess. Although the coffee machine in Sector 7 is still making that weird noise. I should probably take a look at that next." Captain Lisa Wong stood in the audience watching the ceremony and thinking about how much the galaxy had changed. Humans were no longer seen as a threat to cosmic stability. They were seen as a solution to cosmic problems. The Department of Human Affairs had expanded again, with branch offices in every major star system. Their mission statement had evolved, too. When humans say they can fix something, prepare for miracles. The final speaker at the ceremony was Admiral Zixithara, who had become the galaxy's leading expert on human unpredictability. 6 months ago, she told the crowd, we feared that humans would break our universe. Today we realize that our universe was already broken, and humans are just the mechanics who fix it. After the ceremony, Lisa found herself standing with Tony Garcia outside the convention center. He was looking at a broken street light that flickered every few seconds. "That light has been broken for months," Lisa said. Tony finished his drink and handed her the empty bottle. He had that familiar look in his eyes again, the look that made emergency response teams across the galaxy hold their breath. "Hold my beer," Tony said. "I've got an idea." Somewhere in the Department of Human Affairs, an alarm began to sound. The computer had detected another Tier 1 reality alteration event in progress. Emergency crews mobilized. Scientists prepared their equipment, and the galaxy got ready for another impossible day in a universe where humans refused to accept that anything could not be fixed. Lisa smiled as she held Tony's bottle and watched him examine the broken streetlight. Tomorrow, the galaxy would probably have to invent a new branch of physics to explain whatever Tony was about to do. But today, she was just the chief beer holder, doing the most important job in the galaxy, being ready when humans decided to make the impossible look easy.